I'm just going to throw on my usual here. This guy's been a mainstay for me, not because it creates like a good literal representation of color, and I'm not going to be using this as a color palette. You know, I might play around with it, but one of the things I really want is like there's a certain amount of minor temperature shifts that happen inside the skin tone. Skin tone isn't just lighter and darker values of the same color. There's different temperatures depending on like different things like how much blood is in underneath the skin. So you get like a slightly warmer nose, slightly warmer around the eyes, things like that. Obviously the redness of the lips, inside the ear, things like that. But you also get these cooler colors that happen, you know, across the tip, like under bonier parts, like across the tip of the chin or around the eyebrow. And then also in the shadow areas. Shadows tend to be a little cooler because you tend to have kind of warm lights. And so you end up with slightly cooler shadow colors. What I typically want out of a color palette is, you know, you've got a highlight color. Either the highlight is going to be cool. So we have like a cool highlight here. And then we have like a kind of warm terminal where like the highlight meets the shadow. And then you've got this like more neutral shadow color, you know? And we can put that in before we start getting into the local colors on an image by using a gradient map. You can see here, like in this case, all the parts that I would be putting into shadow are getting a blue hue automatically because of where they fall on the value gradient here. You can see that this is kind of like the transition point. And so we're getting all of the shadows are naturally turning a bit cooler. So when we layer more colors on top of this with something like hard light, you know, if we put skin tone on top of this, we're going to end up with different types of skin tone where some of them are going to be cooler and some of them are going to be warmer, not just lighter and darker. And that will get us closer to where we want to go faster than if we were to just be laying on the skin tone as one singular coat, like this. So this is without the gradient map. You can see how flat that is. And then with the gradient map, you can see that we start to get some extra dimension in the color for free. And so that's what the gradient map is doing in this case. So something like this tends to work really, really well for me. But we should try out a couple other ones to see if they're doing anything cool. Like in this case, this is an inversion of it where we have a cool highlight and then a warmer shadow. And based off of what I'm seeing inside the reference image, I just do feel like it's this kind of cool, drab, very neutral tone across most of it. Like he's got a lot of redness in the face and underneath the hair where the colors of his freckles and his blush and his hair are giving a lot of warmth. And that's corresponding really closely to the colors that we're getting here on from the gradient map. And then we are getting a much lighter color as we get closer to the highlights. Which is maybe not entirely inaccurate. We could even go as far as to like eliminate that last gray bar and it'll go all the way to blue, all the way to the top. I might even push this up a little bit to get more of that warm tone in more places. Let's make a new one. I'm just going to like, every time I do a little innovation on a gradient map, I'm going to make a new one just so it's saved for future use. Are you putting gradient map on a mask on its own layer? No. When you make a gradient map, and you make them by going down here to this little black and white circle, this is all the adjustment layers. Gradient map is just one of them. It naturally comes with a mask included, and what I'm doing is I'm just changing its blending mode. In this case, I'm changing the blending mode to soft light so that it blends the color down in a way that's going to kind of wrap around the values in the way that I'm looking for. You can do this to create like a full-on color palette, like in a sort of almost like creating color grading. But what I'm doing here is I'm using it to kind of modulate the colors that are going to be glazed on top of it. You can see I'm getting warmer tones here where we're getting a lot of these freckles and stuff, and then we're getting naturally cooler tones towards the places where the light is kind of like blowing out and washed out and stuff. That's the purpose of it in this case. I've turned it down to about halfway. If it goes up all the way, I think it's starting to go too much. I think we're getting way more than we're going to want. So I'm going to turn it down to about halfway and see if that's like what we're looking for. Even though I'm getting some amount of like color variety out of the gradient map here, I'm probably going to be brushing in the color glaze on top of it a little unevenly, because I can get even more variation by being a little uneven in the way that I'm applying this, so that I can like maybe bring out some of the highlights in the hair a little bit by giving them a little, I'm doing this with my opacity turned down to about 30%. So I can add a little extra red where I want it, bring out the lips, bring out the nose a little bit. If I want, I can darken and saturate the shadow a little bit. And then if I wanted to, I could even like start to push that coolness in the highlight by adding in this really, really pale blue. Oh, my avatar is covering the layers. God damn it. There he is. Moved him. Sorry about that.